identify for you. And what I want to give you an overview of is the reasons for instructional audio, why it's so important in the classroom, why it's important for all students, regardless of their level, regardless of their ability to hear, regardless of their level of attention, everything in the classroom, and why it's valuable for all students. And then after I go through a lot of those reasons for why this technology is important, we'll go into a lot of our products specifically and how we often see it being used in the classroom, how it's integrated with visual technologies, and also some additional tools that we have that make it for more of an interactive classroom and useful for the learning environment. All right, so let's get started. Instructional audio is really built around the idea that young children spend 75% of their day involved in listening activities. In fact, from research, it shows that hearing is the primary channel by which students learn. We understand that intuitively from the standpoint that the teacher is talking in the classroom and students need to be listening. They need to be listening to each other. They need to be listening to the teacher. They need to be listening to maybe what's going on the screen or on the video board. All those things are impactful and directly impact their ability to learn. And if hearing is the primary channel by which students learn, doesn't it make sense that we would put technology into the classroom that would support that primary channel for learning? We put a lot of great technologies into the classroom. You think about devices that we give it to students. We think about visual technologies like the projector or the board, all those things are impactful for them to be able to learn. But if we're not impacting the hearing channel, then we're missing out significantly. I equate it to this idea. We would never imagine putting only a portion of the letters up for children to be able to see on the panel or on the screen. But practically what we're doing, if we're not giving students every single word, every single consonant, every single vowel, then we're not giving them everything they need to be able to hear. In fact, this data point is particularly interesting. This is tied to children that are kindergarten through third grade, that they need to hear over 90% of the words carried by the spoken word in order to understand the context. You compare that to us as adult listeners, if you were only hearing 50% of what I was sharing with you right now, you would be able to piece together the words you're not hearing from the words you are hearing to understand that overall context. But young listeners just do not fill in the blanks. You think about the children's game telephone, where they whisper one to another on down the line, and what comes out the end is very different. It's because all of them are filling in the blanks differently and incorrectly, so that what comes out the other end is very different. It's not a very fun game if you play this with your adult friends, because what comes out the other end is actually very similar to what was at the beginning, because we do fill in those blanks correctly. And while that 90% goes down after third grade, we know that the prefrontal cortex is not fully formed until 25. So, the words spoken in the classroom is really impactful for all ages, kindergarten through 12th grade. And that's for students and all students in the classroom, but we also want to think about the teacher as well. And that teacher voice problems are on the rise. Teachers, we know, spend 80% of their day talking. And research has shown that voice issues lead to 18% of missing work each year. And this is an old stat, pre-pandemic. I think it may even be higher post-pandemic, but teachers are 4.2% of the US workforce, but they're 20% of the clients in voice clinics. And that makes sense, right? Because teachers are using their voice all day, every day. Teachers say 15 to 20,000 words a day. The average person says about 5,000. So a teacher's saying 3 to 4 times more words per day. And this was particularly obvious during the pandemic, where mask wearing was a lot more common, and teachers were having to overcome the barrier of the mask in order to be able to be heard. So teachers started realizing even more so the impact of their voice and having to raise their voice in order to be heard. So what do we do with instructional audio? It's quite simple. We just put a simple wireless microphone around the teacher's neck. And we do that to really focus on 3 things: audibility, or the loudness of the sound; intelligibility, or the understandability or the clarity of those words; and then the equity. What kind of culture and environment are you creating to make a listening environment and a learning environment that's conducive for all students in the classroom. So we want to focus on each of those, and I'll talk with each of them. I want to talk just a little bit of what we call the signal to noise ratio. And I know some of you are familiar with this, but others of you are not. The signal to noise ratio is the signal, which is the sound that you want to hear, versus the noise, which would be the ambient noise around it. And the easiest way I have to explain this idea is with a car, when you're in your car. Now, when you're maybe in your driveway and you're turning on the radio to just get ready to leave, you'll turn the volume to a certain level to be able to listen to the radio. But that's just sitting in your driveway. Once you get out on the road, and then especially once you get out onto the interstate or the highway, the noise floor goes up. So what do you have to do in order to hear the radio? You have to turn it up, because the noise around you has gone up so that you're no longer able to hear the radio. So you need that signal, which is the radio, the noise you want to hear, to be higher in overall decibel level than the noise around that you hear around you. And this is true in a classroom as well. And we talk about this a little bit even from a distance standpoint. And the inverse square law of physics really speaks to the sound intensity that is decreased by the increasing of the distance. So that a teacher who may have at 3 feet away, maybe at 70 decibels of sound, when you double that distance to 6 feet, there is a 50% reduction in sound intensity. And that equates to a 6 decibel drop for the teacher's voice. So that if you go from 3 feet to 6 feet, that decibel is going to go down to 64 decibels of that teacher's voice, which is that signal that we want the students to hear. Now, if you double that distance again, a 50% drop, it drops down to 58 decibels. And in a classroom, if you have a standard classroom, sorry, let me go back, a standard classroom maybe at 55 decibels of sound, maybe in a classroom with students in it. The 70 decibels may be great at 3 feet away, but at 12 feet away, all of a sudden your signal is only 3 decibels higher than what the ambient noise is around it. And what does that do? That causes the students to have to strain in order to hear the teacher's voice effectively. Additionally, it will cause them to become more disengaged. I don't know if you've ever been at a conference or in a session before where someone wasn't using a microphone and they said, "Oh, you can hear me, right?" And the reality was you could hear them, but you had to work at it. And because that signal to noise ratio was not at the level that it needed to be. And naturally, what tends to happen is people will disengage because it's too hard to naturally hear that person. Additionally, directionality has an impact. So, the teacher has inconsistent voice level throughout the classroom. In a standard classroom, teachers are moving around the classroom. So they may be at the back of the classroom at one point, maybe at the front, maybe their back is turned. Research shows that there's a 10 decibel drop in sound when they simply turn towards the board or turn away from the students. And when you add to the fact that you have the loss of the visual cues of visually being able to see the lips move, because that has an impact for intelligibility and understandability as well, then it makes it much more difficult. So that's audibility, or the loudness of sound. There's also intelligibility. Now, a number of you have either an audiology or maybe a speech pathology background, and so this is something that you'll understand very clearly, but it's the vowels that really drive the loudness of sounds. Those are the dominant sounds that can be heard very clearly and transmitted much more easily, but it's a lot of the consonants that are critical for intelligibility, and particularly the soft consonants. You think about the sounds like the P, the H, the T, the K, S. The sounds like the F and the TH, the difference between fin and thin, those sounds, you really can't project the F and the TH much more than a soft whisper. Those sounds are critical for intelligibility and understanding the difference between words. Often when I'm going into classrooms across the country and our sales team across the country is going into classrooms, we're explaining to teachers that students are learning new words from them, whether they understand it or whether they're defining those words or not, especially in an elementary level. So often they're learning new words from the context of the words that are around them, and the words that the teacher is sharing in an educational context are very different than what they're hearing at home or through the media that they're consuming. So it's really important for those soft consonants to be able to be clearly heard so that there's an intelligibility factor. And a lot of those soft consonants are in the higher register of that frequency vocal range, making it often dipping below what that typical background noise may be. So that's audibility, intelligibility, and I want to talk just a little bit about equity, or creating an equitable listening environment as well. So often when we put a microphone on a teacher, and we're going to talk about our microphone here in a little bit and the technology that we have, teachers will say, well, I don't need that. My students can hear me. And so then I have to explain to them, okay, what you're actually telling me is that you are raising your voice in such a way that the students that are furthest away from you can hear you at 15 decibels above the ambient noise in the room, based upon the inverse square law of physics that we just talked about. And if you're doing that, what do you think that's doing for the student that is 3 feet away from you? And they'll just say, well, they probably think that I'm yelling at them or raising my voice. And naturally, they are raising their voice in order to be heard. But wouldn't it be nice if they could use their regular conversational voice and allow every student to have an equitable listening experience in that classroom? And what teachers often end up telling us is that it actually creates a calmer environment, because they're able to talk in their normal voice. They're able to add a lot more intonation into their voice and kind of express themselves a lot better when they don't have to raise their voice. And because of that, students stay more engaged. And so often teachers will say, I used to think that my students weren't listening to me. Now I realize in many cases they weren't hearing me. And it increases student participation and collaboration, and it really helps build that connection between the teacher and the student. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well, about getting student voice into the classroom as well. So that's a little bit about audibility, intelligibility, and equity in creating an equitable listening experience. Let's go ahead and turn the corner and just talk a little bit about how we accomplish that and some of our solutions. Start with our Red Cat. We really have 3 main product lines at Lightspeed, and the Red Cat is maybe our most common one for quick implementation of instructional audio into the classroom. Our Red Cat is a flat panel speaker. You can actually see it here in my video, just right here on a shelf behind me. It is designed from this one speaker to evenly distribute the teacher's voice up to about a 1,500 square foot area. You can see in the example that's provided here, we have it on a bookshelf. It can often be placed on a file cabinet or a bookshelf. It can also be mounted on the wall. And it is designed purely for teacher voice amplification. The teacher has a lanyard microphone. You can see it here around my neck. The lanyard microphone is designed to be very easy to be used, very lightweight, barely noticeable to be able to have it on, very easy to be able to mute and unmute and to adjust volume right here on the side. It has a magnetic clasp on the back, so it's very easy for the teacher to take it on and off. And the Red Cat is, as I mentioned, is on a bookshelf or on a file cabinet or mounted on the wall, but it can also be incorporated with a media connector. And you can kind of see that media connector that's by the teacher's computer. That media connector is this little piece right here, and it's designed to wirelessly connect any of the audio from the teacher's computer or their device to the Red Cat, so that the Red Cat speaker can really be the audio hub for everything in the classroom. Often we find that the Red Cat is ideally placed in the back of the classroom or on the side of the classroom opposite of where maybe the teacher primarily teaches from. And the media connector allows for a lot of flexibility so that you don't have to run wires all the way to the Red Cat, and it can be placed maybe behind the panel if there's a smart board, or directly by the teacher's device and be plugged into there, and it'll provide that wireless connection of audio to that Red Cat unit. So that's our Red Cat. The Red Cat literally can be put into a classroom in a matter of 5 minutes. It's that simple. It's plug and play. It's very lightweight. In some cases, you can even have it portable. It actually has a battery powered option. So you can have a battery on the back and you can charge it at night, and it can work off of the battery all day long. So both the microphone and if you have the battery tied to the Red Cat are designed to have a battery life for a full day, 8 to 10 hours. So that's our Red Cat. I want to talk also about our Top Cat. Our Top Cat is our most common implementation when they're putting them into every classroom, maybe in a school or in a district. And the reason for that is a couple things. One is the high quality of sound, which I'll talk about, and also the ease of installation, even though it is an installed solution. So the Top Cat is a 1x2 that fits into a drop ceiling. And all you have to do is get power to it. So it can be direct powered by an electrician, or oftentimes there may be an open J-box or power outlet right there in the ceiling. In some cases where a projector used to be, they installed a power unit right there, and it can just be plugged in right there. Or you can have an electrician power it, but you don't have to run any wiring up and down the wall, because of, as I mentioned, that media connector. That media connector will wirelessly connect the audio up to the Top Cat. So that media connector works on the Top Cat as well as the Red Cat. And this is a very solution that's really designed for multimedia use. You can see it actually has both a flat panel speaker, which is the rectangular grid that you see right there, and it also incorporates a cone speaker, which is the round grid right there. And what you'll find is a lot of the low frequencies will go through that cone speaker. So for music and multimedia, a lot of the lower frequencies will go through there, whereas a lot of the higher frequencies or the mid-range frequencies, such as the teacher's voice, are going to be going through that flat panel speaker. So the Top Cat provides a really full multimedia sound for music and media-rich applications. Whereas the Red Cat, if you put music through it, you may find it to be, in many cases, it's sufficient for exactly what the classroom needs. But if you're putting a lot of music through it, maybe for a music classroom or something like that, it's going to sound a little bit more tinny. And then our final solution is the 975. And our 975 is a traditional amplifier that will go up to multiple speakers in the ceiling. It may be like 4 cone speakers in the ceiling, as is shown right here, and you'll run the speaker wires up to the ceiling. It could be, in a case where you don't have a drop ceiling, it may be wall-mounted speakers that are being run via conduit throughout the room and amplified that way. So this would be more of your traditional amplifier to speaker solution. It still uses the same microphone. You can actually even still incorporate a media connector. The media connector may not be quite as common because you do have a lot of the same inputs and outputs on the 975. As you can see right here, here's that 975 unit. And you can see we just have a Euro block here on the back that the speaker wire will run off of. And then we also have various audio inputs and outputs, just like we would on the media connector. So this can provide flexibility so that if maybe the 975 needs to be mounted maybe on the wall and have the speaker wire run off the back of it, the media connector could be on the opposite side of the room and incorporated that way. So that's the 975, and it can also be used in a single speaker solution. We actually have a TCQ speaker that looks a lot like the Top Cat unit. It just doesn't have the amplifier built into it because the 975 is the amplifier. So in that case, we have some schools that will utilize the 975 up to that single speaker solution as their standard. So those are our 3 primary classroom solutions. I want to highlight a couple other solutions that we have. One newer one that you may not be as familiar with, and that is our mobile PA solution. This solution just came out in the fall for us. And this, some of you who have been with Lightspeed for a long time maybe remember our Delta system that we had a few years back. This solution is a battery-powered solution that is designed to be able to be used throughout a school campus. It can be used for outdoor purposes, maybe a field day, maybe for recess, maybe for a lunchroom purpose or a common collaboration area of a larger space. In some cases, a PE class or a music classroom, or even like bus lines, anytime that you need to have a little bit additional amplification in order for students to hear you from a crowd control or, classroom or school management perspective. So there's a lot of different uses for this solution. You can actually tie two mobile PAs together so that you can have kind of a companion speaker with it, still using the same microphone and have it be amplified off of both. And we also can provide tripods for these to be able to be mounted. So it's a really nice solution to be able to incorporate. And I know most schools have some need for some sort of mobile PA solution on their campus. A couple other solutions that we have is our Activate system. Our Activate is designed for small group learning. And this is when students break up into small groups, maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 groups at a time, and they're working on a project together. Each group gets a pod, and it allows the teacher, not only with a microphone, but also an earbud that comes off the speaker, along with being able to control it from their Flex mic or from an app that is available to them. To be able to listen in to the authentic interaction of the students as they're working together. So let's say group 4 is working on something. If the teacher walks over to group 4, it becomes a report out. But the teacher may really want to assess how are they working together as a team? Was everybody communicating and participating? Were they engaged on the topic that they were supposed to be covering? And were they having positive communication about it? If so, maybe the teacher doesn't even need to intervene. It allows the teacher to really be able to assess where is my time best spent, because all of a sudden I have 6, 7, 8 little classrooms going on at the same time. Where should I be spending my time and focusing my effort? Additionally, maybe there's a group that maybe is working outside of the hallway or in a common collaboration area. Well, they can just take a pod with them, and it allows the teacher to be able to listen in. But each of those pods also has a speaker in it. So if the teacher wants to unmute and actually talk to that individual speaker, they can and have that communication as well. Additionally, if maybe group 4 has a great idea that they want to share out with the class, the teacher can actually select group 4 to be amplified then through the full classroom speaker, whether that be the Red Cat, the Top Cat, or the 975 solution. So the Activate solution is a really good solution for schools that are looking to do more blended learning, more small group environments. And we're actively working with a lot of schools in their curriculum and instruction groups to incorporate this into their learning environments. And then our last solution is our T3 microphones. And this is a solution that we really came out with during the pandemic that actually allows every student in the classroom to be able to have a microphone. Maybe you have like a Socratic seminar or a session where students are communicating on a very regular basis, and you don't want to have a pass-around microphone. In that case, this allows every single student in a classroom to have a microphone. And what happens is the student who's supposed to talk can just tap the button, and it'll actually mute the previous microphone. So the teacher may call on a student, they press the button, and all of a sudden they're being amplified through that classroom speaker as well. One thing I didn't mention earlier is that we also have a share microphone. You can see it right here. So this is a second microphone that can be provided with any of our units. Much smaller, maybe if you're familiar with previous Lightspeed solutions, much smaller than our previous one, and it actually fits into the cradle charger that we provide to recharge the microphones at the end of the day. But very easy to be able to pass around for students. So those are our solutions. We have our whole classroom solutions like our Red Cat, Top Cat, and 975, and then we have student engagement systems that can be added on to those solutions, such as the Activate or the T3 microphone solution. So that gives you a nice overview of classroom audio and what we're able to provide, and hopefully gives you an understanding of why this technology is important. Appreciate everybody's time on it, and I am going to turn it back over to Lisa to see if there's any questions that popped up.
Great. Thanks, Tony. We do just have a few. The first one is there any research around how these systems support ELL or English language learner students?
Yes, recent studies show that, the English language learning population is increasing significantly across the US. In fact, I think in the last year, it's actually made it to 10% of our overall population being ELL. So it's a very important part of our culture in the US now. Studies show that it is incredibly important to be delivering clearly every single word, every single consonant. You think about what I talked about, even pre-literacy and the importance kindergarten through third grade. Think about how important it is for students to be able to effectively hear the English language clearly when they're in that classroom, especially when they're not probably hearing it at home. That school environment is critical for their language acquisition. There's been a number of studies that are tied directly to this. One of the data points that I find most intriguing is that there's a 30% increase in word recognition from an instructional audio solution being placed in the classroom versus when it is not in place. And that's pretty substantial when you think about it and the importance of that in that environment. So there's additional studies that I'd be happy to pass around with people as well if they're interested. And feel free to reach out to us and we can get you that data.
Yeah, thank you. We also, just as a side note, we have a research ebook that the team has put together that kind of consolidates a lot of different studies over the course of, honestly, the last 20, 25 years. Voice amplification has been something that has been really studied and with a lot of different evidence-based strategies. So we'd be happy to share that in the follow-up along with the recording. Looks like we have two other questions. One is, have you found any challenges with convincing teachers to use these systems? I think kind of going back to your slide about teacher voice and getting them to understand the value.
Yeah, we've put a lot of work into that. During the pandemic, especially, we had just a lot of interest in our solutions. You think about the challenges we had during the pandemic with students wearing masks, teachers wearing masks. We all encountered those challenges. So we incorporated a lot of our systems into the classroom. And one of the things that we always liked to do during the pandemic was provide in-person training. So we would have one of our team come and, go and teach a set of teachers on why this technology is important and go through a lot of the content that I even provided to you today. But during the pandemic, we often couldn't get to them. So we actually were able to incorporate, and we have video modules that are now available. So we're happy to go out in person as well, but we also have all those in video modules that we can provide to schools so that we can highlight why this technology is important. And then just the simple practical steps of how to use it, how to mute, how to unmute, how to adjust your volume, a lot of those kinds of things. So what we have found is that once teachers get used to using it and once they realize the impact that it has and that the students are often asking for them to have their microphone on, they realize how impactful it was. And it's really something that, sometimes teachers are intimidated by technology, and a lot of times they're intimidated by technology because of how challenging it is to adopt and incorporate. And maybe there's new curriculum, maybe there's new things that they have to do tied to that. And, most teachers are passionate about teaching and, being with their students and having an impact on their lives. And what we have found is we keep things really simple. Putting this around your neck, turning it on, you don't have to change the way you teach, just allow this to enhance your teaching environment. And if we can get over that hurdle, then I think teacher adoption is actually really high.
Right. And we have time for one more question, which is, can we try these products before we purchase them?
Yes, absolutely. One of the things I would really encourage you to do is we have an evaluation program, and we provide hundreds of these out as evaluations every year to be able to test and try so that you can actually put it into the hands of your students and have of your teachers and have your students experience it. I can talk about this technology for a long time, but what really matters is, does it have an impact for your student or for your students and your classrooms? And the best way to do that is to experience it. So allow us to come in, put a Red Cat into a classroom for a week, for 2 weeks, for a month. and find out the feedback. Is it something that is useful? Is it something that's impacting the learning environment? Is it something that's helping? At the end of that time, if you want to move forward and purchase the system, you're happy to. Especially with a Red Cat, it's pretty easy to move. So if you want multiple teachers to try it out, you can give it to one teacher for a week, another teacher for another week. Pretty simple to be able to do that and to allow for a number of people to get their feedback and input on it. So please get in touch with us and we'd be happy to set that up. Obviously, we're at the end of the school year, but if it's something that you'd want to launch, in August when school starts again, we'd be happy to get that set up.
Great. Well, we are at time. I just wanted to thank everybody for joining us today. Hopefully you were able to find some nuggets of information, both about just the listening environment as well as how we can help, potentially your districts or schools with some, voice amplification as well as instructional audio solutions. As I noted earlier, we will be sending out the recording if you would want to share that with your teams. And again, as Tony said, please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions or wanted to discuss further how we may be able to support you. Thank you, everybody, and hope you have a great rest of your week and a great weekend.
Thank you, everyone.